And so here's kind of how we did that. So once you get Openclaw up and running, you'll have it, you start it in a terminal window and it populates a browser window. The browser window, even though you're on like an internet browser, it's showing you, it's rendering stuff from a local database. So it's not bringing you a website, but it's just using the browser to have a graphical interface, essentially as a software interface. Once you get a texting thing set up like Telegram, I haven't done this yet because I'm still setting things up, but you can close the terminal window. You can close the browser window. They call it headless operation because it's always running just sort of under the hood on this iMac as long as the iMac is powered on. It's set during the installation so that if the iMac gets unplugged or the power goes out or whatever, the iMac is set to power back up when power is restored. That's a macOS setting. But when it boots and logs into my user automatically, one of the launch agents is to launch Openclaw. So as soon as the power comes back on and the iMac reboots, Openclaw is restored, and it doesn't have to open a terminal window and it doesn't have to open a browser window. It's just running. And so as long as I've got this Telegram channel where I can just text it in Telegram, if I had a more modern macOS, I could just use iMessage. There's several things: Telegram, Signal, WhatsApp, whatever you want to use, Slack. But I can chat with it just like I text with anybody else. And it's always, as long as this iMac is on, it's running. And it can perform things on the Mac, file management and things like that. So one of the things was, okay, you can see the instructions in Notion. Some of these things are like processes that we'll do throughout the day, and you'll only need those instructions for the time that we're doing that. But some of the stuff is general things about how to interact with me and how I want to be spoken to and how I want to be pushed along and encouraged or whatever. And that stuff is sort of evergreen. And so I decided, you know what, we need kind of like a home library where some of these documents can stay and live, or at least that you'll always be able to have access to them. I didn't want to name it library because a lot of software things use a thing called libraries. I didn't want to get confused with that. And so I suggested the term bookshelf. And then I suggested that we might need a place to temporarily store documents because Openclaw needs to pull stuff from Notion and then send it to subagents that don't have the Notion API key, and we don't want to share the key, so they'll just share the content of the document. So I'm like, you probably need to have like a local place where you can temporarily write a file that you're working with. And so it suggested the term workbench, and I'm looking in the Finder and I'm watching it create these folders for a bookshelf and a workbench and an index for the bookshelf and a README for the workbench, so that someone could look in there and see what these things are. And I'm watching it do all these things on its own. It's very cool.